Good morning and welcome to the May 15th, 2025 meeting of the Knoxville Historic Zoning Commission meeting. This meeting is being broadcast on several TV stations, so please speak clearly and directly into the microphones. We'll now have our roll call.
Good morning. For the record, the Knox County Historic Zoning Commission has no business this month and will not meet. For the City of Knoxville, Commissioner Blackburn.
Here.
Commissioner Eason. Commissioner Bradley is excused. Commissioner Kessler. Commissioner Hearns.
Here.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Here.
Commissioner Randazzo.
Here.
Commissioner Tillman.
Here.
Commissioner Kloss.
Here.
That's 6 present.
Thank you. We will now have our swearing in of speakers. If you plan to speak on a matter, could you please stand now? Please answer "I do" to the following affirmation. I solemnly affirm that the testimony I am about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. We're asking all speakers to please keep your presentations to 5 minutes or less. We're also asking speakers, once you come to the podium, to please state your name and your address. And I think there's something for them to write it on too, maybe. Any appeals to today's Historic Zoning Commission decisions can be made to Chancery Court within 60 days of the date of this meeting. We will now move forward with the approval of our minutes from last month's meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We will now go to our staff reports.
Just one level 1 COA issued since the last meeting. This is a new sign at the Kearns Bakery individual landmark. These are illuminated channel letter signs on the wall of the rear elevation. And that's it.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll move to our level 2. And the first one.
All right, so this is 2341 Jefferson Avenue in the Edgewood Park City Historic Overlay. The applicant is proposing the roof replacement on a church. So this is the installation of a new ribbed metal roof above the asphalt shingle cladding. The ribbed metal panel roof features 36-inch panels with 9 inches between ribs. It has exposed fasteners and will be a dark gray or a burnished slate in color. So this building is a non-contributing building to the local overlay. The church was constructed in approximately 1955. So when the overlay was completed, this wasn't part of that period of significance. The design guidelines were adopted on the first reading. There is one more reading, so I can refer back to the old ones as needed. But to refer to our more clear ones, the new design guidelines recommend replacing deteriorated roofing in kind with compatible substitute materials to be approved if an appropriate match. They also discourage the use of corrugated or wide sheet metal. The ribbed metal paneling isn't identical to the explicitly discouraged corrugated metal panels. It also does not approximate a historic standing seam metal roof. It is a darker color, which may reduce the overall visual effect of the ribs in the middle. Work on non-contributing buildings is typically evaluated by how the project will affect the overall district. Due to the size of the roof, the building's large scale, its placement on the lot, the ribbed metal panel roof will be significantly visible in the surrounding district, so staff's recommending denial of the proposed ribbed metal cladding and approval of a roof replacement with asphalt or architectural roof shingles or a true standing seam metal roof, which could be approved with final specs submitted to staff. And then an alternate profile of metal roofing panels could be proposed to the commission.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present, and would you like to speak?
I don't believe they're here.
Okay. Is there a neighborhood rep? Any comments from the neighborhood?
I did not receive any neighborhood input on this one.
Okay. Okay. Any questions from the board?
Yes, I have a question for staff. Pretty sure I know the answer, but just to be clear, if the applicant were to propose a shingle or standing seam metal roof, that could be approved level 1 quickly and easily?
Correct. That could have, if they had proposed that in the first place, that could have been approved as a level 1. And now with this staff recommendation, that could also be approved by staff. And then if they wanted to bring back a different type of metal roofing beyond a standing seam, that could come back in front of the commission.
Okay, so we could deny this and they could still get to work pretty quickly if need be.
Correct.
Thanks.
If I have no more questions from commissioners, do we want to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to deny based on staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned for denial and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We'll move to our second case, and we're moving into the Fourth and Gill neighborhood. The first address is 111 Great Street.
So this is 1112 Gratz Street. So this is the after-the-fact review of the chimney removal. So there was a CMU chimney on the left side roof slope and a stucco-clad chimney on the central roof slope. Both were removed without permits or a COA. And then it also includes the after-the-fact review of the front door replacement. The door has been replaced with a quarter light flat door. So the chimneys were removed without permits or a COA in early fall 2024. So the review now is extensively after the fact. The applicant then applied for a level 1 COA for various exterior rehab scopes. That was issued and all those have been completed. The commission postponed the application in October 2024. Work did continue on the property under that level 1 COA. This did include recladding the roofs where the chimney was removed, and the house is currently listed for sale. So the design guidelines clearly note that chimneys should not be removed or altered if they are original. They should match the original design if they must be replaced or have been removed. So the front chimney itself, the chimney stack, may not be original to the structure. It's clearly constructed of CMU. It's taller and thinner than typical historic chimneys. There is a fireplace and a mantle that are located on that interior wall, indicating the location is original. And that you can see that here in the house now. Both chimneys were visible from the street. And there are multiple examples of comparable chimneys on craftsman houses throughout the neighborhood. The flat door does not meet the design guidelines either. This was just installed without any HCC approval. The applicant should select a wood craftsman style door and submit that to staff for approval. So the staff recommendation remains the same as in October. The staff recommends denial of the proposed chimney removal, reconstruction of the two chimneys with a size and masonry design to reflect the originals or similar houses in the neighborhood, with a detailed drawing for both to be submitted to staff for review. Staff also recommends denial of the installed front door with a revised door to be submitted to staff for approval.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present, and would you like to speak?
Hi, my name is Dawn Arian, and I thank you for this opportunity to address the staff recommendations.
Will you please give your name and address for the record too, please?
Dawn Arian, and my personal address,
Or professional.
1112 Gratz Street, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Thank you.
My business is the owner of the property, and I have a business address at 800 Southgate Street, Suite 700, Knoxville, Tennessee as well.
Thank you.
Okay. I have been aware of the historic guidelines from the start, and I agree that they should be followed. And I have been following them. And I would ask this panel to recognize that the staff recommendation does not follow the historic guidelines. The work was, unfortunately, I did have an alteration permit on the property. It was approved in June, well before the work began. However, the contractor had not paid the fee. This was corrected immediately, and the permit was issued on 8/8/24. So the work was permitted. The front door that the staff recommends be replaced is the original door from 1920. I have not replaced the front door. Beginning in 1910, wood veneer over solid core became a common technique for both exterior and interior doors, which can have the appearance of a flat panel door. In the case file, the door is covered with metal and glass security doors, so you don't really see the original door. However, I can prove that it is the original door. The door is 40 inches wide, which is not currently standard. At the time of home purchase, there was no glass insert in the door. It was a deteriorating piece of plexiglass. Also, the veneer was peeling significantly on both the exterior and the interior of the door. The COA granted removing the non-historic storm windows and security doors and retention and reuse of the original door. Through staff conversations, I was told exterior colors were my choice, so I patched and painted the original 1920 door. To reiterate, this is the original door, and I would hope that I would not be forced to remove the original door that has been with this home since 1920. And I ask that the staff recommendation regarding the front door be rescinded. Unlike the historic front door, the chimneys were not historic features of the home. Evidence and testimony to this fact has been supplied to the city. The chimneys were not original, and no one has disputed this. The guideline is clear: chimneys should not be removed if original. However, they were not original and therefore do not fall under the guidelines. The chimneys were causing harm to the home, as evidenced by the letter from Wendy, which was circulated to the commissioners, the daughter of the former owners. The chimneys were unsightly and did not match in any way the character of other homes in the neighborhood, evidenced by the letter from Bill and Betty, the neighbors across the street, which was also circulated to the commissioners. Numerous homes in the neighborhood do not have chimneys. I can supply a list of 48 homes in the neighborhood that do not have a chimney visible from the street. Having a chimney in this neighborhood is not a requirement for the home to contribute to the historic nature of the home or the neighborhood. I request the commission to vote to not require replacement of non-historic and unsightly chimneys. The Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation are also part of the guidelines and state, quote, "The intent of the standards is to assist the long-term preservation of a property's significance through the preservation of historic materials and features," meaning preserving original elements that still exist at the time of rehabilitation. It also states, quote, "Changes that create a false sense of historical development shall not be undertaken." I appreciate the work of this commission, and I agree with your mission to preserve historic homes and neighborhoods in Knoxville. I leveled homes in restoring them. My decisions were made with the guidelines in mind and in the best interest of the home and its longevity. Previously, this commission moved, seconded, and voted to approve my application. However, that vote failed by a very narrow margin. I request that the commission make the same motion again and approve my application.
Thank you for your comments. How do you correctly pronounce your last name?
Irian?
Irian? Miss Irian, we will have some questions for you, but at this time, we'll ask you to sit down and we're going to have the neighborhood come up and then we'll bring you back up.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We'll now call the neighborhood rep to the podium. Sorry.
Good morning. Aaron Streeter, 925 Eleanor Street, representing 4th and Gill. The neighborhood is in support of staff recommendation on this application. We feel that the guidelines are really pretty clear, but also would like to make the point that the guidelines don't compel action in any way. If the applicant believed that the chimney was incompatible with the building or did not match the style of the building, that could have been brought to commission. But there's nothing in the guidelines that said that she had to do anything at all with it. For example, my house, when I bought it, it has 2 chimneys, one of which had partially collapsed into the side yard. And I had them both repaired because I thought that was the best thing for the house and the look of the house. My neighbor across the street still has 1 chimney that's partially collapsed into his side yard. He's never done a thing with it in the 10 years he's lived in the house, because nothing in the guidelines compels him to act on it in any way. So the action here is really what we're talking about. And if the action had been brought to the commission in the right order, the guidelines would say that your options are to repair it as it is, which would logically probably have been approved by this commission. You could apply to rebuild it with a chimney that was compatible with the house and its original construction, or you could apply to remove it. And I personally just don't believe that if this had been brought to the commission in the right order with an application to remove it, that would have passed without any sort of argument. So if the outcome is different because the application or this process was done in the wrong order, that is of a lot of concern to the neighborhood, that encourages people to do projects in the wrong order. And I've had several conversations with other neighbors on the street and that feel very strongly that consistent applications of the guidelines is the most important thing. One of them very strongly feels that she applied years ago to remove one of her chimneys and it was denied. And she says, in fairness, if that's the guideline, then that should be applied across the board. I also wanted to address the idea that chimneys are somehow fatal to a house, that this house, there is damage in that photo, obviously, that resulted from the roof failing around that chimney. And that's just sort of typical in the neighborhood. That this neighborhood suffered a really long period of neglect and disinvestment. And when that happens, in my house was vacant for 13 years. When that happens, one of the first things that fails is the roof, and the parts of the roof that fail are the flashings and the complicated intersections of roofs and things. So that's not surprising, but that's also not atypical. So in that period, a lot of houses did have chimneys removed, but that was a period before the guidelines existed. And I think of the 260 houses in the neighborhood, there are probably still 250 chimneys. So there are 40, I haven't gone around and counted, I believe, Ms. Arian, that there may be 48 houses that no longer have chimneys. And that is just a fact, but that is also not reflective of the guidelines. It's reflective of a period before the guidelines were in place. The Secretary of the Interior standards and the neighborhood design guidelines are very clear that chimneys are a character-defining feature of houses. And the neighborhood is concerned generally that loss of these features does have an impact on the historic character of the neighborhood as a whole. Thanks.
Excuse me, Aaron. To clarify, the neighborhood position is what?
Is in support of staff recommendation to deny.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if we can anyone have any other questions for Mrs. Streeter?
I had a question. What is the neighborhood's thoughts on the door? I would assume now that we know more information, that might be different, but.
We had mostly been concerned about the chimney, but we were in support of staff recommendation. I imagine if the applicant, since we were basing our discussion entirely on staff recommendation, if staff can be satisfied that door is original, I think that our opinion on that would stay the same.
Thank you.
Okay, what did he say again? What was his answer to your question?
That if knowing what we know now, does the staff recommendation change? And if the staff recommendation were to change, does that, if that was the case, the neighborhood would support the staff recommendation?
Okay, we'll have our next speaker.
Yes, my name is Amy Burnett. My address is 708 Haynes Place. I live sort of kind of down the block from the house in question. The chimneys have been addressed and addressed well. One thing I would like to point out, why in the world would anybody build a fireplace and a chimney after the house was built? Wouldn't you, if you put in a fireplace and chimney, wouldn't you do it while you were building the house? So then, ergo, chimney would pretty much have to be original. Secondly, on page 15 of the guideline book that I have, they address concrete. The concrete sidewalks were completely removed and a crushed gravel was put down, and crushed gravel in the backyard and paths on the side. And that is the only house in a historic district I personally have ever seen in any city I've been to that has a crushed gravel entrance. All of the mailboxes in my neighborhood are on the houses. The only mailboxes that are not attached to the houses as they were when the neighborhood was developed are the ones that were there prior, that were grandfathered in before 1983. There is a mailbox in the front yard with house numbers on it, which are not 4 inches tall, which are not code. Concerning the front door might be historic. I would be surprised if it was, because it doesn't. The width, yes, I didn't know it was that wide. The width, yes, is an indication, but the profile is not. But that's not really the big problem. The big problem is that the inset they put in is plexiglass, not leaded glass. I could not find a reference to overhead light fixtures, but I know when I did my house, there was a rule concerning overhead porch lights. You know, they had to be historically consistent, and the one that is on there is not. It is, again, plastic, a bowl, not the type of light fixtures that were used in the 20s. When they were doing the renovation on the house, on the gable end of the house that you're looking at right there, top left, when they tore that aluminum siding off, there were dollhouse shingles up there, asbestos dollhouse shingles. Well, the square footage was not enough to necessitate hazmat or anything, but they were supposed to be disposed of, not in the landfill, which they were. I have a sample of the shingle on my table at home, of course, because I climbed in the dumpster and got it because I was so appalled. And according on page 14, if you remove something like that, then you're supposed to put something like that back up. And that was not done. They ran vertical siding, wood siding, instead of the dollhouse shingles that were original to the house. There is rotting wood on fascia, brackets, front porch. Window into the basement is just history. And that refers to page 14. And also,
Ms. Burnett, I just want to make sure you are aware you have less than 1 minute to speak.
okay, I'm done just about. That's pretty much it. It's just it's not historically correct to me or to anyone else in the neighborhood. And we were not solicited, as was suggested in the initial meeting, of neighbors to see what we thought. Only one person was approached. I wasn't approached, and I'm out there and talk a lot, and I wasn't approached. So just saying, you really need to look at it carefully because the masonry does not match either. The masonry finish does not match at all. It's a Portland cement, distinctly says you can't use it.
Thank you so much for your comments. If we can have the applicant come back up. I have a couple of questions. Was this your first historic house that you've restored?
It's the first one I've done in a historic zone such as this, yes.
Okay, and when you read your comments earlier, when you first began on the first page, you stated that you've understood the guidelines from the beginning. Is that correct?
Yes, I was aware of the guidelines, and I...
Okay, so let me ask you a quick question. Isn't it true that you didn't come to the commission until after the fact? Yes, no?
Well, the contractor applied for the permit, and he said you need to go get a COA, and it was my plan to do that. And admittedly, I jumped the gun and
So,
got
let me
started
ask-
before
I
I
just wanna make sure
applied for the COA.
So you said you were aware of the guidelines from the beginning. However, you did not follow the guidelines. You did not come to the commission for changes that you were making to a historic property.
Well, I believed at the time that the chimneys were
I'm
outside
sorry,
the guide.
I'm sorry, the person, is this an attorney that you have representing you?
That's my husband.
Okay. Would you like to speak on the matter? Sir? Certainly. Okay, I mean,
Well, I would like to finish answering the question.
okay.
I believe the chimneys were not under the guidelines because they were not original, and I did not believe at the time.
So you
that
didn't come before the commission to get a perspective from the commission on whether the chimneys were original or to get the decision from the commission. You made the decision on your own and acted on it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. The second thing you talked about was the door. You said that is the original door, but you said it was covered with something. You said it was the original door covered with, and I just wanted to get clarification on that.
Beginning in 1910, they started to manufacture solid core doors that were covered in wood veneer.
Okay.
And that's how I found the door when I purchased the home. It had wood veneer. And it was it was peeling and bubbled on both sides of the door.
Okay.
I'd like
Commissioners-
to address several of the comments that have been made.
I'll give you the opportunity, but I'm gonna let the commissioners ask you questions, and then
Okay.
if you want to come back and address something, you can.
Will you put the staff recommendation up, please? Thank you.
I had a quick follow-up to what our chair was saying. Did you replace the veneer since it was peeling and go back with a like veneer?
I tried to scrape the veneer off, but, you know, in some areas it was very much still glued on. Other areas it was bubbled. In other areas it was missing. So I initially was trying to remove the old veneer to replace it with new veneer, but I wasn't able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Can you speak to the insert in the door? What is it? Is it glass?
It's stained glass made by the Fountain City Glass store down on off Broadway.
So that's real leading and not painted on or anything?
Correct. It's glass and leading. And the light on the porch is also glass. It is not plastic.
I have a question for staff or the neighborhood if they'd like input. Would a stained glass in this kind of door be historically appropriate? Or did it have a stained glass prior?
It did. The prior owner had a stained glass insert and her grandson broke it shooting an arrow. And so and she was, both her and her husband, part of the reason the home fell into such poor repair is because they were ill and they were unable to care for the home. And anyway, so the insert was just replaced with plexiglass.
Thank you. You've given sworn testimony that it's original. I don't mean to shut down that conversation, but in order to make progress on it, I don't have any real follow-ups. We got to take your word on that. Pre-1970, people made odd choices with doors, stained glasses that may not fit the historic narrative that we understand, but if it's original, I feel like that's your option. If other commissioners want to stay on that topic and discuss it, we can, but I feel like that's pretty, okay. I had a question for permitting. If you can kind of help us through this timeline. So a permit was applied for, a COA was required, and then it seems that work began before the permit was paid for.
Yeah, so this one started as an over-the-counter request because it was all interior work. And so staff approved it. Lindsay had sent an email and said that that kind of scope was fine. That was in June 24, 2024. I was alerted in August, it's like August 7th, that there was some exterior work being done. So I went by and did an inspection, and there was some exterior work that was being done that was outside the scope that was approved. So I issued a notice of violation, and then, which basically is a stop work order from the zoning standpoint. They applied for a change after permit September 20th of 2024 to include some exterior work. However, there was removal of chimney and re-roof was also included in that, but it was denied. It wasn't part of the scope that was approved. And then they came to HCC in October, I believe. And then that's when this was heard originally. And they have no approval for a re-roof or to remove the chimney.
So what month were the chimneys removed?
It would have been August, and the COA did include the roof approval.
Okay, so the chimneys were removed in August? And you said that they had applied for a permit that included the roof and chimneys, but it was denied?
Yeah, they had applied during that change after permit in September. They had applied for some exterior work, including replacing gutters, removal of storm windows and storm door, remove siding, and some of that stuff was approved, but the re-roof and the chimney removal was not approved. It was not included as a part of their scope of work. They needed to come to HCC to get that approval.
Okay.
Does the stop work order apply to exterior work or interior work as well?
It would have applied to anything that wasn't approved as part of the COA.
Okay. So I'm going to call it a new window, go out on a limb. The new window above the fireplace,
It's a mirror.
it's a mirror. Oh, wow. Okay. We'll just move right past. Fooled me. Okay. Yeah, sorry, that really threw me off. Yeah. I had another question. Let's go to my notes here.
Well, while Commissioner
Sure.
Tillman is thinking through that, did any other commissioners have any questions for her? Do you want to ask your question now or let her start?
Sure. One of the neighbors talked about a window into the basement that was removed. Can you speak to that?
There's the window to the basement has been there. I haven't done a single thing to that window.
Okay.
There's been no change to that.
The COA did cover repair to the existing original windows.
Okay. All right. As well as the dollhouse shingle. Can you speak to that as well?
That was under the vinyl, and it was approved to replace the gable with lap siding.
Yeah, because that was, so the level 1 COA, and this is just confusing because there were multiples, but the staff approval was for removal of the vinyl siding and repair or replacement of the existing wood lap siding underneath. And that included the gable field, the asbestos shingles.
Okay. Thank you. And I remember my last question for permitting, which is kind of about our process. So if a stop work order has been issued and we get the Historic Zoning Commission reviews and after the fact review, can more level 1 applications be approved on that property, or is everything halted? And that's kind of a question for Lindsay too.
The applicant made one application for this. We approved the administrative scopes, the window repair, the siding, et cetera, prior to the October 2024 meeting, but then held the chimney demo for Historic Zoning Commission review and approval. So.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a COA for it and it's approved, obviously, we would allow that to be worked on. But if anything that was not approved, we would not allow that work to continue.
Is there a certificate of occupancy for this home?
There is not. There's not been a final recorded.
Okay. But that is withheld until a COA is approved?
Correct.
Okay.
They won't be able to get a CO until they resolve these issues.
Okay, thank you. That was the important question I was forgetting. Appreciate that.
Okay, you said you wanted to address some of the comments that's been made. If you don't mind, I think we've come to agreement with some of the things, such as some of the things that Lindsay have said was approved that maybe your neighbor said wasn't. So if you can not speak to those, but any that's not been resolved.
Okay, well, I'll let you ask me questions if you're concerned about anything she raised, but I did go, the case file sign was in the yard for this entire time. There was every opportunity for the public to comment on the case file this entire time. I spoke with many, many neighbors when I was at the home, working on the home, who came by and commented on how much they loved the changes to the home. So I don't believe that the people here today speak for the entire neighborhood, because I have spoken personally with many of the neighbors. They're very appreciative of the restoration of this home and how much it has turned around since I purchased it. And my neighbor across the street wrote a letter on my behalf. He's very appreciative of the work done. And also the daughter of the prior owner wrote a letter in explaining why the chimneys were doing harm to the property. And I didn't elect to take the chimneys down without good cause.
But you decided to take them down without approval.
Well, again, it was pretty obvious that they were not original to the home.
But
And
you-
no one
you
has
still-
disputed that.
I think the question is, but you decided on your own to take them down without approval, without going through the proper processes to be approved, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Keep going.
I'd like to make a couple of comments. First of all, there's a lot on this project that you did a really good job on. You can see a lot of the character retained. The post on the front porch look really good, and you can tell that they're original and well taken care of. In regards to the chimney not being original, while what it's composed of might not be original, it's very similar to, say, if your home had all vinyl windows put in that were done sometime in the 70s, 80s, whenever. You would not be able to just remove all of the vinyl windows and patch over them. You must have the windows or replace that window opening with something more appropriate or not replace it at all. So I understand your point that the current or the old chimneys were not original, but the chimneys and their placement were original to the house. And we are held by law and certain guidelines to uphold. And so that's what we have to make our decisions based off of. Thank you.
Which is why I keep going back to the fact that she said she understood the guidelines from the beginning. And I think that was the premise of your comments and the decisions and thoughts that's being carried on here today, no matter what other comments are being said. We're talking about following guidelines and in the process and respecting the process. So
the guideline speaks to if chimneys are original, and
okay, I think we talked about that and we've exhausted that. I think we're going through procedure, the guidelines being in place, and going through the proper procedures for things to be carried out correctly. If you
okay,
didn't have any,
so if I could speak to that.
well, I think we've exhausted the comments. So I think if there's no other questions that you have for us,
I do have additional comments.
okay, we're going to give you 2 more minutes because we have to keep moving in the process.
No, I'm going to do it. So the interior standards of rehabilitation are, also states that they are to be done in a reasonable manner, taking into consideration economic and technical feasibility. So simply because we would like the originals to be there, recreating something that had already been lost is, we don't know what the original chimneys on this home look like. We don't have that information with which to create new chimneys. And again, that the guidelines say that this is intended to preserve historical features, and recreating something in an attempt to make it look historic, it says shall not be undertaken. So if the issue is that I didn't follow the proper procedure, is the proper remedy rebuilding 2 chimneys, or is there another remedy that we could entertain that would not involve rebuilding 2 chimneys where we don't have the original to guide us to what that would be?
Okay, thank you for your question. Let the commission go through our process, and whatever decision is made, then it can be next steps for you to talk to the city and staff on what can be done, if you don't mind. And I think your time is up.
Can I address 2 issues? The first is.
No, sir. Let me have you sit down for a second and let me talk to the staff.
All right,
So we're gonna have the commission deliberate on this issue for a second.
I just wanted to ask a question to the commission, based on what the neighborhood rep said about the options had she gone through the process before. And one of the things that I heard him say was more than likely she would have, it could have been removed at that point if she had went through the process. Because I'm new, I'm trying to understand everything. I'm curious with the commission, if the process had been followed, would that have been one of the options that we think would have been entertained or possibly approved to remove them? And maybe that's not a fair question after the fact, but I just want to understand what that process might have looked like if she had done it.
I can speak. That's a pretty common application. I feel like you'll see pretty frequently. Folks come to have chimneys removed, and typically chimney demolition is evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So we look at visibility from the street, whether it's kind of a primary chimney like the one on the left or a secondary chimney towards the rear. We look at materials. So we would have definitely looked at this as a CMU, obviously like a reconstruction versus an original brick chimney. And those are generally and then we look at the neighborhood design guidelines. Typically, the recommendations are for chimneys to be repaired or reconstructed instead of demolished. But again, they're kind of evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So that's generally.
Yeah, and I think what's going on here is there's no opportunity to actually make a full decision because it's gone now.
Sure.
Lindsay, if I can comment too, and Lindsay, please correct me if I'm saying something that's incorrect, but if a house is, built, say in the 1950s, but then something is installed in the 60s and it's not original, it can still acquire its own historic notability and character for the house, right?
Sure. Yeah.
If we can enter the hypothetical world that Commissioner Kessler has described, which I think it's useful. It's June, and we're discussing, hey, can I take this chimney down? I feel like the options that I would support would be keep it or rebuild a chimney that's more historically accurate in materials. And I think Commissioner Randazzo really described well a good process of, we don't know the exact dimension of that chimney, but we've got an echo of it. We don't know exactly where the soldier rows were. We don't know if it tapered, but we have a general idea of its height and form. And I feel like that gives you flexibility in what could be built back. But I feel like that also informs my opinion for this application today, which is, I think you have the option to build back something that's historically appropriate in material or something in CMU. I feel like if anybody watched the meeting we had back in October, I think it was 16 views on YouTube. It was an extensive discussion. I felt that we can't compel you to build something that wasn't there. I feel like from a legal perspective, we can't make you build a brick chimney, but preserving one that had historic notoriety due to its age and keeping the original materials is within this board's purview. But I also feel like from a preservation standpoint and material standpoint, you could do either. That would be ideal, and I think rebuilding either would also be ideal and satisfy the neighborhood. And a well-flashed cricket could stop future leaks.
Just comment to the city permitting department again. You said that you guys had approved part of their request, but you had explicitly denied the removal of the chimneys. Was that a message that they also received? They knew that you all had not approved the removal of the chimneys?
It wouldn't have been included in their permit. So in their scope of work on their permit, it would not have said that they could remove the chimneys and re-roof.
So it would have said, they would have requested so many items, let's say 10 items. You all come back and say, these 5 are approved.
Correct.
So, which means the other 5 were not.
Correct.
Okay.
I have a couple of comments. We have to be careful, because we use the word precedent a lot, and obviously someone had this enforced on them. I don't know how long ago, Aaron, but I imagine it's been a while. So just keep that in mind, that if we've asked someone to do something, we need to stay consistent. With that in mind, I'm sure that cost is probably a factor in this. I think we're not talking about operable chimneys, are we? I mean, these are decorative, so I don't see the need to build a full-scale CMU chimney. Why not just frame a chimney that comes up above the roof? And obviously, it's not going to have structural integrity to support anything big, but you can do face brick and different type of masonry that someone from the street, they can't tell if it's a full brick or a face brick. I think that might be the compromise to where you just build the chimney from the roof up and make it a decorative feature and not an operable chimney with CMU block and all of that cost. So it's my opinion.
I think that's a great approach because I think, one, we do have to make sure that process is followed. And I appreciate Madam Chair's, holding to the rules so that the rules are appropriate for everyone. So thank you for that. But I also think that because it feels like it's a very nice, they've done a really good job. I mean, I would think if I'm living in this neighborhood, compared to what was sitting there, they've done a really good job to do it. And I think that's a great option or approach to be able to satisfy everybody so that they can keep moving.
We talk about precedent, but for me, and I think Aaron may have touched on this, we also don't want to set a precedent where someone who clearly knows the rules and the guidelines decidedly make their own decision to interpret them and act on them because, this is a large neighborhood. One of the things the applicant talked about is 48 homes this or 48 homes that. Well, I think we have hundreds of homes in this neighborhood. So we don't want everyone to come in, as this applicant clearly did and has admitted to doing, as knowing the guidelines, coming into this, but making decisions on her own to take action. So that's a precedent we don't want to set or allow people to set in this situation.
I agree, but this certainly isn't the first case we've heard over the years where this has happened. And I'm not advocating one way or the other.
Yeah, I didn't think that you were. I just wanted to put my point out there.
Okay, and I'm with you.
And I think that's something that Aaron Streeter also brought up, and I think is important. We're done right now. And so
I have a question for Christina from a law perspective. Do we evaluate case-by-case basis without
Yes.
setting precedents?
Yes.
Yes, that's
Correct.
generally true.
Yes.
You're right. That's one of the
Right.
first things they teach you in property class is
Right.
every single property is different. There are no substitute properties for any other
Correct.
piece of property. I will say though, the board or the commission has a duty not to be arbitrary or capricious.
Correct.
Which is not setting precedent, right? But at the same time, you need to make sure that if you're going to make a decision that really departs from something that's been done in the past, we just need to be clear on our reasoning why we're doing that. Otherwise, keeping in generally the same rationale with the decisions we make.
Thank you. I will just echo, I think Commissioner Blackburn's suggestion is a good option. I think that is something we could add as an option for approval by Lindsay if the board feels that that is appropriate. We would just need to revise that recommendation, correct?
I would want the neighborhood's input on a faux chimney with a possible peel and stick brick. I brought this up in the last meeting, and one of the reasons we postponed this was we wanted more neighborhood input. So again, glad to have extra speakers. But as far as that, I think I mentioned in the last meeting, I wasn't sure how I felt, and I would defer to the neighborhood on that kind of compromise.
Right, and I'm talking about like a new brick product, not peel and stick. That's
Ma'am, we're done with comments from you. We're letting the commission deliberate so that we can prepare for a motion. But thank you all. We're done with comments from the outside. We're letting the commission deliberate so that we can move forward. We're finished, ma'am, if you don't mind, respectfully sitting down. We're going to deliberate, and then there's going to be a motion made.
Have been raised. I believe I have the right to respond to those.
If you don't mind sitting down for a minute, we're going to continue to deliberate as the commission. So I think that you had mentioned to Lindsay about Rick's comments, and you guys maybe wanting to craft something or have a motion related to what has been spoken? Okay. So we've had proper deliberation, and if someone would like to make a motion.
Okay. I would make a motion to, see, that's where I'm unclear as to how, I see the words, but I'm concerned about how I don't have a feeling for the fellow members of the board as if a motion would pass or would not pass. That's
I
where
mean,
my
it's fine,
concern is.
but yeah.
Well, if somebody else feels like they can say it better, I'm struggling with the proper words to offer.
So are you offering then that they go back to discuss with staff some remedies that might include certain things, and then also giving the neighborhood opportunity to then come back and hear that part? Is that what we're looking at?
So if that were the case, it would have to come before us again.
Okay, so
That's where,
why don't we consider postponing for 30 days, allow them to come back with the compromise solution with the faux chimney? Yes, no?
I would want to hear from the neighborhood today and from the applicant again about their opinions on that type of compromise before
if that is a
voting.
doable solution before
Yeah.
we move
Okay.
that way. That's,
But you have to still follow a process, sir, that we've kind of been pointing out the whole time. I think that's why we're here, because of the lack of following a process. And if that's why I ask you to respectfully allow the commissioners to continue to deliberate. It looks as though one of the commissioners now is saying it would be good to hear from you all about possible solutions that have been brought. So at this point in time, would the applicant like to come up and address what the commissioners?
Madam Chair, could we hear from the neighborhood first?
Okay.
Please?
Mr. Streeter?
I think the neighborhood would be in support of the wording of the guidelines. I mean, as it is up there on the screen, if, I've lost my place, but it should match the original design if they must be replaced or have been removed. And at this point in time, you know, whether it had to be removed or not, it has been removed. The applicant has made the decision that it had to be removed. So at this point in time, the neighborhood, I believe, would feel that it should, if there is to be a replacement, it should match the original design.
Give us some clarification on match the original design. Are you talking about CMU and full boat on this?
I mean, I think, I'm not sure you can find the old CMU like that anymore. But if everybody is kind of under the impression that an original design would have been a brick chimney, I don't think anybody would have any objection to a veneer brick chimney, you know,
Right.
with a, as you were talking about, a frame inside, as you would build a house with brick veneer these days, because it is a decorative element at this point. It is a character-defining feature. It is also a decorative element.
Because I feel like that once, whatever happens below that roof line is really none of our business. All we're worried about is what's visible. So all I'm caring about is seeing some framing with some masonry on it above the chimney. I don't need the CMU and all that below, which is a lot of expense and for the owner.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
It
Thank you.
appears the CMU chimney's a little taller than the neighboring houses. Do you think the neighborhood would support shortening that height?
Yeah, I think if there's a precedent of them being lower than that, I don't see that there would be any objection.
Thank you.
It is tall.
I think the wording of the staff recommendation helps with that a little bit because it talks about others. Or maybe that was discussion somewhere in there where it talked about others in the neighborhood. Was that in the discussion? And the recommendation? Oh, there you go.
Reflect the originals or similar houses in the neighborhood.
Correct.
Do you guys have any other questions for Aaron Streeter? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one more, sorry. It's a small item. A neighbor brought up a mailbox at the sidewalk. I know, I don't want to get into the whole debate with, we've had fights with the U.S. Postal Service about mailboxes. Is that a significant issue for you all? Or
I don't think as a neighborhood, we've ever considered that as anything to bring before Historic Zoning Commission. I personally think that we need to protect our walking routes as much as possible, but that's my own personal opinion.
yeah, it's easily removable or changeable without disrupting the integrity of the home. So I didn't think it was significant, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak to it.
I would say that there is some precedent to once they're removed from the house, the post office does object to having them put back on the house. So it,
We don't need to rehash that whole thing.
Okay, can the applicant please come?
Yes, thank you. I would say that I did reach out to Aaron Streeter multiple times via LinkedIn and email, and I tried to have a conversation with him about what the neighborhood would like, and he was non-responsive. So it's difficult for me to hear this today, having reached out many times, and him being unwilling to have this conversation with me where we could have reached a compromise, where we could have found some kind of solution that would appease the neighborhood. Again, I don't believe he speaks for the whole neighborhood. I've had many neighbors stop while they're walking down Gratz, mention how much they love what I've done with the home. The guidelines, I understand that the procedure is really, I think, the issue.
If you don't mind, we've hashed that out. If you can respond to
Okay.
the potential recommendation
Okay,
that could
so-
come from the commission today regarding replacement.
Okay, so the potential recommendation regarding replacement would create an economic hardship. And I would appeal that with an economic hardship application, which is in the guidelines, that I could appeal that for an economic hardship. I'm not, because I believe that the removal would have been considered with the original application, that would have been an acceptable remedy. I think it should still be considered, and I think that the remedy for not following the proper procedure, I don't think putting chimneys back is in proportion to, I don't think that is a remedy, because that would be extraordinarily difficult and expensive and creating a hardship for me at this point.
Someone mentioned that the house is on the market, so you all have finished with all construction. Okay.
Yes. And again, I did reach out to the community. I did talk to the neighbors. I did elicit feedback. No one I spoke to ever mentioned the chimneys or had any concern for the chimneys in all of my many conversations. In fact, Bill and Betty were quite happy to have them removed because they were such an eyesore
Now,
to the
who's
neighborhood.
Bill and Betty?
They're the neighbors across the street.
Okay, so just 1 second. Aaron, your name has been brought up, has been non-responsive. You are the neighborhood rep? Yes. Okay, and do you all have meetings?
The board has meetings.
Okay, and,
We have neighborhood meetings, the board discusses sort of zoning.
oh,
I would
okay.
rebut that. Aaron is not actually on the neighborhood board. Chris Ivy is the president of the board. And I did also speak with Chris.
Okay. I'm gonna let Aaron respond and then we're gonna move
Okay.
forward. Go ahead.
The neighborhood rep is not required to be on the board. It's a volunteer position. I mean, we have lots of volunteers in the neighborhood that do various things that are not on the board.
Right, mhm.
At the end of the outcome of the October meeting, the October HCC meeting, my understanding was that the applicant was gonna go to the board and discuss this to kind of to see what the board's feelings were. I don't know that that's happened. I was not informed of it if it has, but I don't believe the board ever took this up at any meeting.
I
Okay,
went to
thank-
Chris Ivy, the president of the board.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
could I
Yes,
could
well-
I respond to the
That you didn't
the
respond?
contention that I didn't
Okay, go ahead.
respond? I was, Lindsay contacted me at one point to say that the applicant had said that I was non-responsive. So I looked through all my email, I looked through all my phone messages. I have no contact from the applicant. I guess I've learned this morning that she tried contacting me on LinkedIn, which I don't use particularly.
Okay, thank you. And thank you applicant, but we need to move forward. Thank you.
I'd like to say something for the record. Mr. Streeter is one of the most active.
You can have a seat, ma'am.
One
Thank
of the most active neighborhood representatives that we get. I find him to be very thorough and detailed and know what he's doing. And so I don't want him to be mischaracterized in any way. We appreciate his service and everything that he does. And this case isn't about whether he responded or didn't respond. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Do we want to go ahead and now that we've heard from the neighborhood rep and the applicant, would someone like to articulate a motion, please?
Yeah, but I don't.
But it sounds like that's not going to be considered, so I'm struggling to go
Yeah.
on a clear path forward.
If that's not a motion that the applicant would be interested in, I think we could move forward with what's on the table and they could submit an additional application in the future should their mind change.
So do you think we should postpone or deny?
So are you saying, Commissioner, that you think we should go ahead and take a vote on the motion, on the staff recommendation? Okay.
Yes.
Can you present that to us?
I will. I'll make a motion to deny based on staff recommendation.
But
But we need to update the piece about the door, or has that already been updated?
It has not. I would like to hear it all in one motion.
Yes.
That'd be great.
And I can't make the motion, even though it's in my head. So can someone please make the motion?
I'll make the motion to deny based on staff recommendation as written.
And then the door, the last sentence.
What about the door? Is that including the door?
Yes.
We have a motion to deny based on staff recommendation. Is there a second? I think that motion is going to fall flat. Does someone have another motion that you would like to present?
I would just motion based on staff recommendation for the chimneys. Removing per staff recommendations of the chimneys specifically, not including the door.
Okay, we have a motion to,
So just for clarification, Renee,
I'm saying it wrong.
no, it's okay. No, I just want to be clear for the record. So you're motioning to basically adopt staff recommendation with the exception of the final sentence regarding the door.
That's exactly.
Excellent, okay.
And this is because that they don't want the compromise position, they don't want the faux chimney.
No, this is because the applicant has told us that the front door was original.
it's not about the chimneys, it's about the door. Because I think this leaves it for them to actually do the chimneys the way staff recommended.
Okay,
Yeah.
And leave the installed door as is.
okay. I'll second Commissioner Kessler's motion.
Okay, so it's been moved and properly second that commission deny based on staff recommendation regarding the chimney, but not include the recommendation to deny the door.
Further discussion, I wanted to just say so that they're able now, with this first and the second motion that's on the table, to come back and meet with, and do a supplement application, I guess, after maybe, so maybe just as part of the discussion phase, would they be able to meet with the neighborhood? Is that, I'm just, I guess, using this for a record to give the opportunity, to meet with the neighborhood rep and get a meeting together so that we can put in another application with what might be a remedy.
They would have the opportunity to meet with the neighborhood. And the way that the staff recommendation is written just says size and masonry design to reflect. Originals are similar in the neighborhood with a detail to be submitted to staff for review, so that doesn't, right now, they're not required to come back in front of the commission unless they submitted a separate application.
Gotcha.
They could work it out with staff.
And clarification for Christina, do we have to deny with or without prejudice? Does that matter?
So typically, I think that with these types of applications, there's generally a ban on reapplying within the same year. However, you can, make that clear in the motion that you're denying it without prejudice, which would mean that they could immediately come back. Yeah.
Okay, so can I amend that motion? to do so?
Absolutely, yeah. We would just need a re-second for that, but absolutely.
And I'll second.
can,
Okay.
can I would like to offer a compromise.
We are in the middle. Please, if you don't mind, we're in the middle of a motion. If you could please have a seat so we can continue to discuss.
Okay.
She did. And I second. Did.
So now we have a revised motion, and that has been seconded. We'll go through each commissioner to vote yes or no. Dallas?
Commissioner Blackburn,
Yes.
Commissioner Kessler,
Yes.
Commissioner Hearns,
Yes.
Commissioner Kloss,
Yes.
Commissioner Randazzo,
Yes.
Commissioner Tillman.
Yes.
That's 6 yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
I'm not clear
We're-
on how the motion read.
So the motion is to deny the chimney removal that was completed and the reconstruction of 2 chimneys with a size and masonry design to reflect the originals or similar in the neighborhood, with a detail for both to be submitted to staff for review. Based on the commission's discussion, this could involve operable masonry chimneys or some sort of a reconstruction veneer, but the detailed drawing would be submitted to staff for review. The second sentence related to the front door has been removed, so the front door is fine to stay.
Okay, we're now move to the second case in Fourth and Gill, which is at 911 Eleanor Street.
Okay.
We have one comment.
Yes, I have a conflict with this case. This applicant has filed nuisance lawsuits against the city and property owners on a project on which I'm engaged. Therefore, I'd request to be recused.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Blackburn. You are excused.
I don't think it's a nuisance lawsuit.
Well, you can sort out who
Sir,
the nuisance
first of
is,
all,
Daniel, if you want to go there.
If
We
if
know
you
who
can
the
go have a
nuisance
seat,
is.
please, we're not even at the point of calling you up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
Thank you.
So this is a new primary structure fronting Eleanor Street. It is, and we can go through the existing context here. This is a 2-story or a 1.5-story single-family house that measures 60 feet wide. It's currently proposed to be set 20 feet from the front property line. And the house features a cross gable roof with a 9/12 pitch. It's clad in a low-profile standing seam metal roof or dimensional asphalt shingles. There's 2 roofing materials included as options here, with overhanging eaves all over 12 inches, pressure-treated wood gable brackets, faux rafter tails, and trim. So there's roofing details there. The roof features an internal brick chimney. The house and its foundation will be clad in brick veneer, with gable fields clad in fiber cement shakes with vertical trim. The roof has shed roof dormers, so right now we're looking at the facade. The roof has shed roof dormers on the facade and left elevation. The application includes fiberglass, Fibrex composite, or aluminum clad casement windows as 3 options for window materials, and there are specific products included in that application packet. Looking at the facade, the house features a partial width front porch. Under the front gable massing, it's supported by 4 tapered square columns on brick bases, and there's a brick guardrail. The porch is accessed by stone steps with a metal railing. The project also includes a new secondary structure featuring a garage on the first story and an accessory dwelling unit on the second story. I can go back through the drawings, but just to run through some of the findings. Overall, the 1.5-story house uses a craftsman style, including the roof forms, front porch design, materials, window placement and proportion, and then architectural elements. The house's style is compatible with the context, but it uses contemporary materials and proportions. It's sufficiently differentiated from original buildings. The guidelines recommend maintaining the facade line of the streetscape, aligning new buildings with an existing alignment. The house is proposed to be set 20 feet from the front property line. The average of the block face is 30 feet, with 923 Eleanor at 29 feet and 905 Eleanor at 28. There is another additional vacant lot here adjacent to this property. The house should be recessed towards the rear at least 5 feet to align with the existing pattern of the block face. The parking meets the design guidelines located at the rear of the property. The house is proportionate to the context of the block. The block itself has many of the neighborhood's larger houses. It's proportionate to the context. Overall, the form is broken up with multiple projecting massings and bays, along with dormers on the roof slopes. It incorporates a sufficient amount of transparency on each elevation. The roof line is the pitch and roof form are compatible with craftsman style houses in the neighborhood. It also has typical craftsman details, and both of the submitted materials meet the design guidelines. The proposed materials also, exterior cladding materials also meet the guidelines, including the brick cladding. Fiber cement siding has been previously approved for new construction in the neighborhood. The proposed fiber cement shakes are compatible with the style and they break up the massing. Overall, the elevations have a sufficient amount of transparency. Single light casement windows would not always be an appropriate replacement window for a historic house. They do differentiate the new house from the surrounding older houses. The applicant has included 3 material specs as options for the window materials, and in the opinion of staff, fiberglass, the Fibrex composite, and the aluminum clad wood are compatible with the context. They're appropriate within the guidelines for new houses. Final selections should be submitted to staff for approval. In terms of the accessory structure, the garage and the accessory dwelling unit meet the guidelines. They are designed to be secondary to, but compatible with the primary structure. They resemble typical secondary structures in the neighborhood. The materials correspond with the house. The final site plan and elevation drawing should meet engineering and zoning standards. If there are minor revisions to meet the code, they could be approved by staff. So staff's recommending approval of 5C, 25HC, subject to the conditions that the front setback be recessed towards the rear property line to align with the existing block face. The site plan, including the garage and accessory dwelling, meet city engineering standards with revisions to be approved by staff. And the final window, door, and garage door specs be submitted to staff for approval.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Lindsay. Now, applicant, would you like to speak? And I want to know if you have any questions based on Lindsay's recommendation.
I do, and I have a handout for all the members of the board, if you don't mind.
Introduce yourself.
I have a handout for all the members.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, Daniel Sanders, 714 Haynes Place, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37917. I haven't been before you guys before. This is our personal residence. We live in the neighborhood. We've lived there. I've lived there for 14 years. So we love the neighborhood. We want to live there. When this lot came available in '23, we purchased it, hoping to build our own house. Since then, we've had a couple of kids, and we are running out of space. So this is going to be the house that we grow into. It's been vacant. The lot has been vacant since the 1980s. It was re-subdivided in 2001 to make 2 lots out of 3 lots, essentially. That's important because I think the current proposed setback is a little bit deceptive. When the lots were subdivided, the city took 5 feet of the front of our property for right-of-way. And so our property line set back 5 feet from the other property lines on the street. You can see that in the KGIS photo there. So our house meets the current zoning setback 20 feet from the property line. I did receive.
Just a quick question before.
Yes.
You saying the city took 5 feet of yours, but not anyone else's?
No, so there were 3 lots there. Those 3 lots were subdivided into 2 lots, and the city took 5 feet of both of the resulting lots for setback. And you can see that there are 2 lots there that are 5 feet shorter than the other lots on the street.
Okay.
And so that presents a little bit of a, you got to understand where we're going here. Aaron Pennington, who lives 2 doors up, owns the lot next to us. And so we got an email yesterday from city engineering that says that they will support closure of that right-of-way to make our lots align with the rest of the lots on the street, because after they did the subdivision, they abandoned the policy of requiring those dedications in the right-of-way. So when we go through that, we tried to get through that all at the same meeting, but we'll go through that process later.
Did you bring that email?
I can
Okay.
forward it to Lindsay.
Okay, we got it. Okay,
We
that's
just
fine.
got it yesterday,
Okay.
and I've shared it with Aaron, and Aaron's reached out to a surveyor. But so when that happens, our proposed house will be set back not 20 feet from the street, but 25 feet from the street, or from our property line. And so you'll need to understand that. And so we agree with staff recommendation, except for this recommendation about the front setback. And I want to try to give the board a way to agree with us on the issue. The regulations say consistent setbacks establish a visual order. They create public and private distinction. private space for residents, and they permit landscaping on the front of the property. The recommendation says to maintain the historic facade lines. And the last sentence there is probably the most of concern to the board. It says, never violate existing setback patterns by placing a new building in front of or behind the historic facade line. And so I think this creates a distinction between existing setback patterns, which we have on the street, and historic facade lines. And there may be a difference between existing setback patterns and historic facade lines. In this case, I think there is a difference, okay? And so I've given you a handout, and we'll march through this handout.
You actually don't have that many minutes, sir. You have like 2 minutes left to speak.
Okay, well, this is the only thing we're gonna go through. And so, this is Sanborn maps from 1917 on page 1. It shows our piece of the Sanborn map there on map 76. The next page, figure 3, is map 76. It shows our piece of property circled in red. Figure 4 is a blow-up of the 76 map, showing a comparison of historic facade lines on our block. Okay, so Mayor Kincannon's house is up there, top right-hand corner. And then as you come toward Gill Avenue, which is the street along the bottom of the picture there in figure 4, the house is actually, the historic facade line actually gets closer to Eleanor. Those green lines are equal length, and the next figure 5, shows a blow up of the house that would have sat on our lot in 1917, and it shows that those 3 houses there at the corner of Gill and Eleanor were actually set closer to the street than the houses that are on up closer to Caswell. And so that's the historic facade line, and I would submit to you that you would not be violating the existing setback pattern or the existing facade line by setting a house in front of or behind the historic facade line, which might be different than the existing pattern in our neighborhood on our block.
Okay.
That, I think, is reinforced if you look at some of the historical aerials on KGIS. I've put 1959 in there. I think you can see some shadow lines there of the house as it sat before it was torn down in the 1980s. Figure 9.
So your time is up. You just hit 9:50. Let me ask you a quick question. So it looks like outside of the setbacks, you did say that you guys were fine with the other.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let us talk to the neighborhood and we'll call you back up if we have any questions.
Okay, and
We'll
can I
look through
just
this.
like
We'll look through this.
30
while
more
we're-
seconds?
No, we,
Okay.
well, you can get that later.
Okay.
Would the neighborhood rep like to come up and speak?
Aaron Streeter again. The neighborhood is in support of staff recommendation on this project. And also, we'd like to kind of commend the applicant for really taking a lot of time to work with the neighborhood. And I know personally, I live on this block, and he's kind of run through iterations of this house with me to kind of get my impressions of it at the time. And I think it's been very thorough public process, at least within the neighborhood. Maybe this is the first time that public process has been thoroughly public, but
I would like for you to speak to his comments about the setback and if you don't mind.
yeah, the block is kind of unique in that for some reason all of the houses are set farther back than anywhere else in the entire neighborhood, I believe. My house is 32 feet back from the sidewalk, I believe. I maybe disagree with the argument he's making a little bit, that the Secretary of the Interior standards are pretty silent on infill generally because they're concerned with old structures, but where it does address it, the emphasis is on making new buildings less prominent, new additions to buildings less prominent. So if you were saying, I'm going to reconstruct the house that was there, maybe there'd be an argument for it being exactly where it was. I'm not sure it's quite as strong an argument for a new house that is a different house. But it is true that this house is it's rather wide for the neighborhood, but this block also has some wider houses up toward the north end, and it does a good job of kind of mediating its mass on the block by being a story and a half. I don't think that I mean, the neighborhood conversation was to support staff recommendation. I believe that there probably could be some compromise on that setback, though, because the block also has, Lindsay had the photo up earlier, there's a drainage ditch kind of through the middle of the block that's all grown in with trees. So you don't really perceive the setbacks of the north half of the block from the south half of the block. So, I mean, I think it's a good conversation for commission to have, whether that a 5-foot difference or a 2-foot difference or a 3-foot difference. You know, it maybe will not be as obvious as in a lot of other other locations in the neighborhood, just because of the peculiarities of this lot. So.
Thank you, Aaron. Anyone have any questions for Aaron?
I'd just clarify that the staff recommendation doesn't have a specific number. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how much the house would have to be recessed if anyone has opinions on that too.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
If I could, I did get a couple other comments from the neighborhood about specific materials and choices. They're really sort of, to my mind, opinions, and I'd like to just kind of put them into the record, if I could. I'm not sure any of these are asking the applicant to do anything in particular, but since he has been so open to kind of neighborhood comments, one of them is that the roof options presented, the neighborhood would prefer a flat roof without the ribs, the metal roof. And on the windows, we agree with staff recommendation that any of those materials would be acceptable. I know some of the fiberglass windows have kind of odd sills, and you have to do a little bit of additional detailing to make them look appropriate, but we would be comfortable with staff kind of going through that review. There was a comment about the shingles, whether they're staggered or flat across the bottom, and the person who brought that one up prefers the kind of aligned shingles, especially in the Hardy. They look a little predictably patterned, I guess, when you use the jagged edged ones. And then the last comment was one person was not particularly excited about the kind of blank casement windows. My opinion, I guess, is I kind of agree with Lindsay that can be kind of a marker of differentiation between this house being a new house and a original house, so that the trained eye can tell the difference, because it is a very well done design that does otherwise meet sort of traditional expectations of what a house in the neighborhood might look like. So I don't know if commission has any strong opinions on any of those either. I just wanted to kind of express those as comments that I have received.
Thank you. I have a question, Lindsay. So on here, on the application, it says that it's proposing a 20-foot setback from the front of the property line. With the information that he gave us that the city has a 5-foot right-of-way, if including that right-of-way, would the house really be 25 feet back?
It would be 25 feet from the comparable adjacent front property lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to respond to what Aaron has said as first?
We are absolutely, and I appreciate Aaron. Aaron's been very responsive to me, and I was here for the last one. We are absolutely open to, we don't have a preference for the staggered or the straight shake shingles. So I think my wife, who's here with me, Sarah, she actually prefers the straight, so we'll go on with the straight. Absolutely on the standing seam. The concern with the flat was that it would oil can or oil pan. There's something that happens, but if there's a product that won't do that waviness up the roof, it'll stay flat, then absolutely. We don't have any problem with that. The last couple of slides on our handout, figure 10, is a blow up of the next map, which shows the block up Gill from us, which is the Main Street Luttrell. And that shows 307, the block 307 there is the Luttrell block, and Luttrell runs north and south there. It shows a similar graduated historical facade line as you approach Gill down Luttrell. And there is still a multifamily there on the corner that's set very close to the street. And so I wondered, like, in my mind, why is that? Why would you see two blocks that have a similar graduated historical facade line as you approach Gill? And then if you want to look at the KGS topographical map, both of those blocks have a similar topography. And there's the topography, I mean, it makes sense, right? They're similar blocks, they're located in a similar area. The houses further north are steeper front yards, and the houses further south, it gets flatter. So you could set your house a little bit closer to the street and not have to have a big set of stairs in front of your house. So I think, we're going to get 5 more feet. I think our house is probably set 5 feet in front of the houses next door to us, but the house closer to Gill is not a historic house. I think it was built in 95, so it's not a historical facade line. It's an existing facade line. My bet is if somebody buys that lot, they tear that house down and build a bigger house there that will probably meet historical guidelines. I don't think this house has got vinyl siding on it, the vinyl windows. It was built in the 90s. So,
Sir, did you say your proposed house would be in front of that house or behind it?
it would probably sit 5 feet closer to the street than that house. Yeah. But it would. So our property line, as it currently sits, is probably 5 feet back from the sidewalk. We're going to get that 5 feet back as we close the right-of-way, and the city gives that back to us and my neighbor to the north. So it'll actually be 25 feet from the property line, but it'll still be set in front of that non-historic house.
Which is 907.
I forget the address, but it's
Doesn't
the
one
one.
know the
It's the
address?
one on the corner there. Yeah. And so our historic facade. I guess I'll end with this. Our historic facade line on this block tended closer to the street as you reach Gill, and the Sanborn map in 1917. The house that was directly on the corner of Gill and Eleanor was set very, very close to the street, very, very close to the corner, very close to the street on Gill and Eleanor. So there's historic precedent for setting a house closer to the street here. And so I would just ask the commission to approve per staff recommendation, but allow us to put the house as proposed, which would be 25 feet or 20 feet from the existing property line and 25 feet from the property line that we'll get from when we close the right of way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the way you guys propose it would be like it would be the same.
Do you have a comment?
Can I get clarification on the staff recommendation?
So that staff recommendation was made without the knowledge that they'd acquire that additional. It's just approved subject to the conditions that the front setback be recessed towards the rear property line to align with the existing block face. Applicant has shown they do have an additional 5 feet there now, so the commission can consider that one. And then the final site plan, including the secondary structure, needs to meet engineering standards with any minor revisions to the placement to be approved by staff. Then the final window, door, and garage door specs be submitted to staff for approval.
Okay, so in regards to the setback of the home, is staff recommending that basically putting that house in line with the house next door? Because you said there's no specific number of feet.
The intent is to have the house be generally in line with the character of the block. And that allows, not including a specific number there, does allow the applicant some flexibility to recess it. Also, based on information discussed here, the commission has the opportunity to remove that, et cetera.
So something I think we should take into consideration, houses in this neighborhood that haven't had a porch, that have had a porch added later on, because porches are a very important element of our neighborhoods. We've gone against the typical setbacks to allow for that porch space. And there's a considerable sized porch on this house that when you're standing next to it, visually you can still kind of see through the front. And I think it protects the intentions of the setback guidelines.
I'm generally in support of this application. I feel like we've got a pretty clear answer on a right-of-way and an effective setback. I feel like from a historic standpoint, not a general zoning standpoint, we treat the setback as from either the sidewalk or the road, whatever's most common with the houses. And I feel like it's an effective 25 feet, and that seems sufficient for me. I really like the design of the house.
I just had a question about the neighbor, and I was just wondering if the specific neighbor that directly, I guess would, if any, directly impact, do you have a relationship with that neighbor, and how do they feel about?
The neighbors' names are Rick and Sherry Sneed. The house has been vacant for a number of years.
Okay.
I have located them. They live in Powell. I have reached out to them by phone and LinkedIn and email, and have not received a response from them. Other people in the neighborhood have known them, and it's an odd relationship. I think.
But the house is vacant.
The house is vacant.
Okay.
Somebody shows up to mow the yard every once in a while, and that's all you see. In fact, the wooden fence is now fallen down every which way, and they come and mow the yard and remove parts of the fence as it falls down. And I don't know what's going on there, but
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
If there's no more discussion, I can make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendation with striking the first item about front setback to be recessed, considering the new information we have about the right-of-way and effective and perceived setback.
Seconded.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? If not, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Mhm. Okay, we'll now move out of Fourth and Gill and move into Fort Sanders. We have 1618 Clinch Avenue.
Okay, so here's some photos of the existing house. This is a proposed roofline reconstruction, addition of a new rear dormer, and a new rear elevation addition, along with an exterior rehabilitation. The house has an existing 9/12 pitch roof. It will be removed and reconstructed with the same overall height, pitch, eave overhangs, and partial cornice returns. There's an existing shed roof dormer on the rear elevation, I'll show you in the photograph, that will be removed and reconstructed as a 4-bay dormer with a 4.5/12 pitch shed roof clad in fiber cement shake siding. The pitch and design of the front gable on the facade will be reconstructed. And then on the rear elevation, as you can see here on the photo, this to the right, a flat roof 2-story deck and rear addition are proposed to be removed, and a new flat roof addition will be constructed underneath it, beneath this existing flat roof massing. There's some exterior rehabilitation scopes in here, including the installation of new windows and existing fenestrations. The applicant has discussed both recladding and repointing existing stucco, or recladding it in shingles overall, and so those photos are here in the presentation. And then some of the windows on the side elevation will be revised in size and placement. The removed windows will be enclosed with siding to match. And so the arrangement of these windows will be as seen in the elevation drawings. The packet has demolition drawings and rehab drawings. And so in terms of some of the findings, guidelines, the proposed dormer addition meets the design guidelines for Fort Sanders. Dormer additions have been approved. This one will be located on the rear roof slope. The dormer is proportionate to the overall building. The siding meets the guidelines. The height and pitch of the reconstructed roof will be retained, and drawings indicate the eave overhangs and partial cornice return details will be reconstructed. The window replacements are appropriate within Fort Sanders' guidelines. The windows that are going to be shifted are not character-defining features of the building. The facade window arrangement will be retained. If at all possible, these 9/1 window patterns should be replicated as character-defining features, although that is somewhat outside of Fort Sanders' design guidelines. So overall, staff is recommending approval of 5D 25HC as submitted.
Okay, well, thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present, or would you like to speak?
Ryan Dennison, 110 West Summit Hill, Knoxville. Yeah, so I guess the recommendation, is it to approve the shingles?
So the staff recommendation was written and drafted after you had included those shingles. And then again, in the neighborhood conservation overlay, a separate permit, we don't review just simple exterior rehab scopes. Those come in when you guys are proposing these broader projects. And so I've included these for the commission to discuss. So just to clarify, the applicant now, kind of slightly after the staff report was published, has proposed recladding the whole exterior in shingles. So that's up for discussion. In the opinion of staff and, in line with the Fort Sanders design guidelines, these materials meet Fort Sanders' guidelines.
So you still recommend?
So the recommendation is approve as submitted.
Okay. Do you have, I'll see if anyone has any questions for you, since it's.
That was my only question.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments from the neighborhood?
I did not receive anything from them.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Congratulations. Okay, we'll move on to the Mechanicsville area. We have 216 Chancellor Avenue.
Okay. This is a new primary structure fronting Chancellor Avenue. It is a one-story duplex that measures 17 feet wide by 78 feet deep. There's a second unit located behind the first. The main massing has been revised to be set 15 feet 6 inches from the front property line. This is a duplex. It features a 12/12 pitch front gable roof clad with architectural shingles. There are 1-foot eave overhangs and exposed faux rafter tails on the side elevations. The facade features a full-length 8-foot deep front porch recessed under a 6/12 pitch half-hipped roof. And there is a similar porch on the rear elevation. The building is proposed to be clad in composite wood lap siding with wood corner boards and trim, and it will rest on a parge-coated concrete block foundation. We can see the side elevation window arrangements, and I'll run through some of these with the findings. So the lot to receive new construction is a 35-foot wide lot. New construction in the overlay in the last 20 years has been more elaborate in style and detail, but the street that will receive this new construction, this block of Chancellor, is relatively modest in housing stock. The proposed shotgun form and the style is appropriate for the context. It's similar to the building that had been there or at 210 Chancellor previously. Design review typically discourages building identical adjacent houses. There is an associated application for 210 Chancellor that's similar. It is sufficiently differentiated. They've reversed the facade fenestrations and the plans. The guidelines encourage maintaining the historic facade line of the streetscape and aligning the setback pattern of the street. In this instance, it's echoed actually by the zoning standards, which require a front setback within 5 feet plus or minus of the block face average, whereas in the last case, we were sort of discussing the overall character of that block. The average front setback is 17.4 feet. The applicant has revised the site plan to align with the block face. The side setbacks are consistent with the block. Overall, the scale and proportions of the new duplex are similar to other single-story shotgun houses on the block and in the broader neighborhood. The building is compatible with this block's scale, height, width, and massing. Most houses on the block feature a full-width front porch. This porch is similar in design to others on the block, and the porch has been revised to measure 8 feet deep from the initial submission. In terms of materials, the design guidelines for Mechanicsville note that synthetic siding is inappropriate and not allowed as new siding in new construction. It discusses limiting concrete siding to outbuildings and garages for new construction only. Other historic zoning overlays, including 4th and Gill, Old North, and Edgewood Park City, have approved fiber cement. lap siding with some specific conditions on new construction through design review process and with the general consent of the neighborhood. In Mechanicsville, fiber cement has not been approved on additions or new construction. In the opinion of staff, it doesn't meet the current Mechanicsville design guidelines. Fiber cement lap siding can be appropriate for new construction. That would be based on the preference of the commission and the neighborhood. In terms of other materials, the materials are not specified for the proposed windows. The applicant revised some initially proposed slider windows. These are now on the side of elevation small or double hung. The applicant the commission should discuss the overall size and proportion of these small double hung windows in relation to historic windows in the neighborhood. The facade does have the full height, like larger windows there. Vinyl windows are not appropriate in a historic district. Alternative materials could include fiberglass or aluminum clad wood based on the preference of the commission and the neighborhood. The elevation drawings reference a wood trim. There is a sill profile here that references hardy. The final trim material should be consistent with the approved siding material with windowsills that are compatible in design with historic windowsills. So staff is recommending approval of 3C25HC, subject to the condition that the front porch have wood tongue and groove flooring and a beadboard ceiling. That is in reference to the guidelines. The final window materials should be approved by the commission with specs submitted to staff for approval. And the window materials can be discussed at the meeting today. That doesn't require a return. The window trim to be compatible in material with the final cladding selection and with projecting sills compatible in design. The front door specs submitted to staff for approval, and then the main one allowing for commission and neighborhood to discuss and approve that final exterior siding material.
Okay, is the applicant here? Do you have any comments on what Lindsay has written in the recommendation?
R. Bentley Marlowe, 322 Douglas, 37921. I would like to turn attention to page 23 of the Mechanicsville Guidelines. It's titled Rules for New Building Construction, and subpart R there says materials, number 1, quote, the materials used for new building exteriors shall be consistent with the materials already found on buildings on the street. Can we go to street view, please, Lindsay? If you look, this street is kind of odd. In fact, previously I'd spoken with Kay Graybill when she was in this role, and she had said that it was very odd that only one half of the street was in the overlay. So if you look here, if we could go to street view, only this side of the block is in the overlay. And if we're going to be consistent with materials on the street, that RN4, those are 2 duplexes owned by KCDC. They're vinyl sided clad. Next door is a historic home vinyl clad. Then we have a split face block, duplex, infill, doesn't even meet the setback. It's split face block. Virtually the whole other side of the street is vinyl siding, vinyl windows. This photo is dated. I actually redid the house there at 235. That now has hardy siding on it and composite windows. If you've been around to the other side of the street, that's my friend Dustin has redone those. That now has hardy siding, but vinyl windows. The little blue house there is still vinyl clad siding and vinyl windows. Beverly's house there is still vinyl siding with vinyl windows. Miss Delancey's house is the 2-story, kind of back on the left. It's got, we presume to be asbestos shingles with vinyl windows. And then to finish out the street on the left down there is a KCDC duplex that is vinyl sided with vinyl windows. So on this street, if we're going to match materials, I think predominantly that street is vinyl. I'm not advocating for vinyl. I like a hardy product. I'd like to do a 4-inch reveal, smooth. That's what we put on Francis's house at 235 Kanzler. And it, from the street, you can't tell it's not poplar siding. The front porch, I believe it should be concrete. Most of the houses I just mentioned and went down through the street, they have concrete porches. There's only, by my knowledge, I walked the street last night, I believe there's only 3 houses on the street that have tongue and groove wood siding. The rest are concrete. Concrete's a much more durable, much more sustainable, lower maintenance. Long-term, it's cheaper to maintain. I'm trying to build something that will last and look historically appropriate for the next 100 years with minimal maintenance, because as we've seen earlier today, Thank God I don't have a chimney in this one. That house is just deteriorated over age, and that's created all these issues that we're now dealing with. I'm trying to build something that will not deteriorate over time. And as far as the windows, I've got a handout here of just cost, because I think cost should be, in the middle of a housing crisis, we should be thinking about cost. I apologize if you could share. I just I'm using from BZA, so I printed 5 of these, and I'm kind of short. I'll give you guys a copy. So my proposed door is right here on front. It's a synthetic door. It's a fiberglass door, but it looks like a Craftsman door. I've used this door, and I try never to stick them side by side, but I've used it throughout Mechanicsville. I've got no complaints, nothing but love from my neighbors. But the real issue comes these windows, and that'll be the following pages. So you could just see the difference. So we have a vinyl window, which is predominantly found throughout that street. It's $165. I have a clad wood window, roughly the same size, not exactly, but this is all I can get through my preferred supplier. It's $299. We're talking about nearly double the cost. And I believe it's smaller, slightly smaller. For the larger windows on the front, my preferred vinyl window is $259. The clad version is $400. So if we're going to make any meaningful approach at addressing housing affordability, we need to be somewhat understanding with our material selection, particularly in light of this rule that in Mechanicsville, the material should match what's already on the street. Most of the houses on the street have vinyl windows. And finally, concerning the siding, I've got a handout that I gave you guys talking about more flexible approach to historic building exteriors. This is from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. It's advocating for hardy. The Secretary of Interior, National Park Service allows hardy and allows clad windows. Doesn't exactly say that you can't use vinyl on a new building. So I would say that these are appropriate materials as times change. I think we should adopt better materials to be better stewards of our environment, of long-term maintenance cost, and just housing affordability. And finally, I'm going to show you here, this also came from the National Historic Preservation Trust, this picture. This is in a historic district that received federal preservation funds in southern Mississippi, cleanup after a hurricane. It features hardy and vinyl windows, and it's, ironically, very similar to my design.
We're going to thank you for giving this out, but we're going to have call the neighborhood rep up if there's any comments from them, and then we'll call you back up if we have any questions.
And I believe our neighborhood representative is
Okay, thank you.
participating via Zoom, so they can unmute themselves and.
Hi, my name is, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. My name is Carlin Harrod, and I'm the neighborhood representative for Old Mechanicsville. I reside at 1312 Dora Street. So I wanted to say that there's many infill homes within our historic district that are really indistinguishable from the historic homes in the neighborhood, and we believe that that is due to the builders following historic guidelines of our neighborhood. And that members of our neighborhood are concerned about elements of this application that don't seem to follow the guidelines, such as the use of non-wooden siding and non-wooden windows. And additionally, the neighborhood notes that the windows on the sides of the home seem to substantially differ both in consistency and size from the large double-hung windows that are common throughout the neighborhood, including on Chancellor Street. We believe that the overall choice of a shotgun home fits the street really well, but we wish that the applicant were adhering to the guidelines and wish that there were inclusion of more historical elements common to shotgun homes, such as decorative porch elements. But we do note that the staff recommendations of the beadboard ceiling and tonguing roof floor on the porch, that perhaps that could satisfy that, but we would like that to be considered as well, given that lots of the shotgun homes in the overlay and in the broader historic Mechanicsville neighborhood, which is outside of our district actually. We are a very small district. They do include things like beaded rail, decorative brackets, and turned posts. So we think something like that would be really beautiful to add and to try to keep that historic charm. But if the commission were to think that other elements satisfy the historic characteristics, we're happy to go with what the board recommends.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to, in response to the applicant's note about the consistency about the materials being consistent on the street. It is true that Chancellor Street is split. I don't know whether or not that is weird in overall historic overlays in other parts of the city. So I don't know how that's handled, but to me it seems that we should be just considering the homes on the street within the overlay, because if you start normalizing things with things that aren't in the overlay just because they're on the same street, then it seems that over time that would allow the design characteristics and historic elements just to degrade and fall away, as a overlay may kind of shrink in essence then.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have? So are they for or against it? Are you for or against the recommendation of the staff?
The recommendation of the staff states that there needs to be conversation with the neighborhood, and it's not as written like super clear. I mean, some of the elements I think we agree with, but other ones that, like the siding, it says need to be determined with the neighborhood, and so it's hard to say.
The staff recommendation would just be, we left the exterior siding material open for commission and discussion during the meeting. So that's the one element for the commission to discuss there, or among others, obviously.
So as far as the application, is the neighborhood in favor?
We would be in favor of it with wooden siding and wooden windows that are consistent in size with other windows in the neighborhood, which the applicant did include on the front of the house, the larger double hung windows.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
And just to be clear, the neighborhood is less concerned about the porch floor material being concrete or tongue and groove, or?
Sure, we think that including historic elements on the porch is really important, and that adding things such as the beadboard ceiling or the tongue and groove floor and beaded rail or things like that that are common on shotgun homes would be important to include in this application.
Thank you, Carly.
A question for the neighborhood rep. Back to the staff recommendation, please. Does the house that you live in, what's the material on the front porch on your house?
The material on the front porch of my house is wooden.
Okay. It's tongue and groove?
The upstairs is tongue and groove. When we bought the house, the downstairs was wooden, but not tongue and groove. The porch requires some work that we plan in the future, and when we do that, we do plan to replace it with tongue and groove floor.
Okay, thank you.
May I respond? The first distinction that I would say with her house, she's on a different street. Two, let's talk about history. There have only been 5 or maybe 6 new homes built in that overlay in the last 21 years that I've lived in that neighborhood. I live on one street down on Douglas. They were built in the mid-2000s. The builder went bankrupt, and they do not hold up very well. Lots of plywood. Plywood's not the same as poplar siding. The paint peels. Nobody's trying to fix it because it's cost prohibitive. If I'm required to do wood siding and wood windows, this will never get built. I've sat on these lots for almost a decade. I have worked with and Carly is part of a new revitalized Omni. Previously it was ran by Carol Johnson and Kathy Gonzalez. And for years I've been trying to allow hardy and allow clad windows. Those ladies were not interested. And for that reason, these lots have sat and vanquished for 10 years. They will continue to remain vacant lots if I'm required to put wood windows and wood siding, because wood requires constant maintenance. You're repainting about every 5 years. I don't think I have to tell you all that the wood grown and produced today is not the same quality of the wood 100 years ago. You're just saddling that homeowner or the landlord or whoever's dealing with that home with a ton of maintenance costs. It's just not sustainable. It's environmentally irresponsible. It's morally and ethically irresponsible, in my opinion.
Thank you.
I have a question for the neighborhood rep. Has the neighborhood had discussion about single hung windows?
Yes, we have had discussion on windows, and the opinion of the neighborhood is that the double hung windows are important characteristics to continue with applications. I believe that they are important in the neighborhood.
I couldn't find anything in the Mechanicsville design guidelines mentioning single hung windows being appropriate. I think that there's the ability to get creative at an infill house to do new styles, but single hung kind of falsely appear to be historic and aren't functional, kind of like fake shutters on a house. They don't function or make sense. In the items that you gave us, I just wanted to note that the difference in pricing, you presented a single hung vinyl window. And I don't know that that would be allowed, like if it was made of wood. I don't know that single hung would be okay. There is funding from the city for gap funding for when you do find the difference in two products and one's vinyl and one's wood. I don't know. I know that there are some income standards to that. Depending on how much funding there is, that could be something to consider. But I just wanted to point out that those were two different windows.
Oh, well, I would push back and say that from the street, which this is all about aesthetics, you can't tell if it's single hung or double hung just by looking at a window that's unopened. So
You can. There's a different profile and dimension, which is often why we aren't able to approve vinyl windows, even if someone shows that there's a need financially to do so. It just doesn't meet the same dimensions. But there could be other options, but I don't think that single hung vinyl are going to be it.
Well, I'm willing to do the clad. I just wanted to demonstrate the cost difference. I believe those clads are double hung. The other thing I would say, like Mr. Sanders' proposal earlier, I think that allowing a different window, in this case, even if we were to, I mean, it sounds like we might get crazy with the cheese whiz if we did it, but if we were to allow vinyl on this house because the majority of the street is vinyl, that would be the nod to distinguish that this is not an original house because the design is pretty similar to what was torn down there.
I feel like there's something important that we need to clarify.
Let me ask you a question, just so we can.
Go ahead.
Are you need to clarify with him or with the commissioners?
All of us.
Okay, including him.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
When we're talking about a design guideline and applicability, we only have oversight over what's in that overlay. We cannot look at what else is on the street and say, oh, it's on the edge, and so therefore we have to go with what's on that street. We have consistently looked at what is in the overlay. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we have consistently looked at what is in the overlay specifically. I understand that at edge of a district, that's probably why that edge of the overlay was put there. There's been a lot of change on that street. The second thing I want to note is it is our job, and I've stated this a lot during my term, it is our job to determine, do you meet the guidelines or not? We do review on a case-by-case basis, but there are times that what is proposed does not meet the guidelines, and it is our job to say it does not meet those guidelines. I understand your frustration at wanting to update the guidelines. I myself was involved years ago in a different role in trying to update those guidelines. I understand your frustration. I truly understand that. But our job is, does this meet the guidelines or not?
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You can have a seat. Thank you.
May we see a picture of the block, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So this is a relatively dated Google Street View. And this is the block that is in the overlay.
I appreciate the applicant's inventory of the street, the intimate knowledge of the street, personal insights on the street. But we've had this discussion with other neighborhoods as well about edge parcels. I've used this example before. We have multiple historic homes in Old North in my neighborhood that border a gas station. Neither of those homes are inspired by a gas station. They're not a half gas station. They are just like any other portion of the home. It seems arbitrary that the border is somewhere, but it's got to go somewhere. We have jurisdiction over what's in our historic overlay. We don't have jurisdiction over what's out of it. That is a changing condition. 10 years from now, there could be no vinyl siding on that street, and our choice to apply it here would not be, it'd be incongruent.
So,
That's all I had. I think we're really only discussing the materiality and the window size. If we can just, if we can make some progress in generally the design of the home, I feel it's appropriate and admirable. And yeah, it's window size, materials. And I had one other question for the applicant. What you're proposing, I hope Kara isn't charging you by the page. I would appreciate a slightly larger elevation looking at the front. I need to get some readers. What does that edge look like for that concrete porch in your proposal? Like you have a parge, okay.
The block will be parge coat. There'll be a 1.5 inch lip on the concrete edge.
Okay.
I'm fine with staining the concrete to give it a darker, maybe less concrete wood look. If I could even wrap it maybe with pressure treated lumber, I think that's a little goofy. Definitely we'll be planting some shrubbery in front. I mean, from the street, I don't think it's going to be even noticeable. And I just want to reiterate, I'm not asking for vinyl siding. I was just pointing out I pull vinyl off of houses outside the overlay. I'm just a big proponent of sustainable, smart, maintenance-free materials. I use the vinyl single-hung window. That's what I use outside of the overlay for cost purposes. This is a middle housing duplex. I'm a proponent of creating affordable and sustainable housing design. And the trim is proposed to be hardy. I think that's just that wood trim is a boilerplate thing that we just missed in our review with Kara and Matt over at OSK3. But everything would be, my proposal is hardy. And like I said, if I have to put wood on this, I just won't build it.
Thank you.
if there's no more discussion, would someone like to present a motion?
I can make a motion. It's to approve with all staff conditions, 1 through 5.
What's 5
though? Oh, sorry. With wood siding.
And
Okay, so
and the wood, so I apologize, Travis. Condition
Sorry.
2 also recommends that the final window materials to be approved by the commission. So can the commission incorporate a material recommendation there for the windows as well?
Wood as well. Sorry about that.
So for number 5, wood and no hardy.
Correct.
Okay.
Is that clad wood?
Correct.
Windows, clad wood windows?
Is that within the recommendation?
So the recommendation was open-ended there.
Okay.
It's your,
I'm not sure I'm
commission's
familiar
decision.
with wood sliding windows. But I mean, I guess something could fit within that size of a hole.
Are there any examples of any of this?
There's 2 windows that slide.
Yeah, they would not be sliding if we go to wood clad. But the poison pill is this wood siding. If we can't
So
get to,
the staff recommendation there would recommend that the final window specs be submitted to staff for approval as well.
And to date, Mechanicsville's not approved hardy siding.
That's correct. It has not approved hardy siding for new construction or for replacement siding on originals.
but I believe these are merely guidelines, and I believe this commission has the ability to.
Sir, you're not allowed to get up when we're in the middle of discussion.
I can restate my motion if that would help everybody. Make a motion to approve per staff recommendation, guidelines 2 and 5 specifying wood material.
And are you okay, aluminum clad wood?
Yeah, aluminum clad wood is fine, yes.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Okay, I think that,
I'll second.
okay. So there's a motion on the floor. It has been properly second. We will take an individual vote. Dallas?
Commissioner Blackburn,
Yes.
Commissioner Kessler, Commissioner Hearns,
Yes.
Commissioner Kloss,
Yes.
Commissioner Randazzo,
Yes.
Commissioner Tillman.
Yes.
That's 5 yes, 1 no.
So the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that this completes the commission's business for today. I have a motion to adjourn. So moved. Thank you. The meeting is now adjourned.